Hello, good morning, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Michael Conway of Renaissance, and I'm delighted to be joined by Phil Robinson from Lepide. And the plan and the objective of today's webinar is to cover a complete guide to the NIST cybersecurity framework. Phil is going to take us through that in I suppose, a relatively whistle-stop tour, and hopefully looking at the benefits that the Lepide technology can offer to you in terms of being compliant with that framework and how you can strengthen your organization's cybersecurity using Lepide. Just a couple of things in relation to the housekeeping today. The session has been recorded. Unfortunately, there are a few people who are unable to attend the session and wish to see it, so it has been recorded, so it will be made online, made available online as an on-demand session. All attendees have been muted, but what we would like to do is to maximize the benefit for you as attendees to the session. So please ask questions, please raise questions, send them to me through the chat, or send them to me directly, and then we look to address those questions later on at the end. But it's very, very important from our perspective, and I think from your perspective, that you get the maximum benefit out of it, so that all the areas are addressed that are relevant to you. So thank you very much for that. I think really what I'm going to do is pass you on to Phil. From a Renaissance perspective, we're delighted to have this opportunity to talk to you and to introduce Lepide to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Yes, let's just get into it. I'm going to cycle through some animations here, so I don't keep having to fast forward. So first place we'll start, I'm actually going to stop my video as well before I forget, because I just want to maximize my my bandwidth. So there we go. Right. So before we get started into the main bulk of it, helpful just to do a little brief introduction about how the cybersecurity framework, or the CSF, came into existence. So the US doesn't have a singular data security law for the private sector. Rather, it has a bunch of separate laws for various sectors, such as finance and healthcare, and things like HIPAA compliance, for example. And there have been efforts to establish uniform privacy and security regulations. Those are currently underway. There are still some obstacles that are too detailed to get into on this session for that. But in order to assist with the private sector in addressing security issues, the US government provided guidance through the CSF, and it was a voluntary program launched back in 2014 initially. And it's based on a model that should be familiar to everyone, that you can see on the left of the screen there: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, govern. It's become a really widely accepted international standard, and it allows organizations to adhere to existing security standards and comply with regulations. And it also organizes security controls into higher level groupings. And another benefit of it is it really promotes a continuous approach to security within IT. The govern part of that model, on that inner circle, that was added recently in version 2.0 of the framework. And we are going to keep this session very high level in terms of the overview of the framework, but it does make sense for us to take just a few minutes to clarify what changed in version 2.0, because it's still relatively new. So the biggest change is that it includes that govern function now. And this is really an addition that was meant to emphasize cybersecurity risk management governance outcomes. So it's central to the rest of the pillars. It kind of acts in conjunction with all of them. And it informs how an organization will implement the other 5 functions of the CSF. So that governance component, what we're really looking at there, it's emphasizing the security, cybersecurity in general, is a major source of enterprise risk that senior leaders should consider alongside other risks like financial risks and reputational risks. It really is central to today's modern organization. 2.0, it now also applies to all organizations across government, industry, academia, critical infrastructure, you name it. The framework's been adapted now to apply to any sector and encompasses a range of organizations varying in size and also the maturity of the cybersecurity programs that are already in place. So by broadening the scope, NIST are essentially hoping to make the framework helpful to your organization, regardless of what sector, what type, or what size you are, to help you address the security challenges that we're all facing. And then another addition it's worth looking into is that NIST has created a complete suite of resources to help organizations achieve specific cybersecurity goals. And they've added an emphasis on governance and supply chains, and they've got searchable reference tool, a reference catalog with mappings to other cybersecurity documents, and some community profiles to help understand how other companies are actually using and implementing the framework. It's well worth a look. You can just Google NIST CSF 2.0 tools, and you'll see a complete list of things there on their website. Now, here are the functions in a bit more detail. So, governance, we mentioned, this element's all about establishing and monitoring your company's cybersecurity risk management strategy, expectations, and policy. Identify is focusing on understanding the organization's cybersecurity risks, as well as its assets, vulnerabilities, threats, and impacts. Protect, and this element aims to establish and implement safeguards to prevent or mitigate potential cyber threats. So that would include implementing security controls to protect sensitive information and critical infrastructure, for example. The detect element is all about your ongoing monitoring for indicators of compromise and making sure that you've got rapid incident detection. And then respond, obviously, is about developing and implementing incident responses and managing contained cybersecurity threats. It's all about your speed of response. And then recover is about restoring yourself to normal operations as quickly as possible if you do happen to have a cybersecurity incident. So these are the functions that are at the very, very top level of the CSF hierarchy. They represent what you could think of as the first sorting bin, so to speak. And with CSF, every security control in a specific standard can be assigned to one of these functions. So as one example of this, let's take a look at PCI DSS. So when we're looking at the higher level functions of PCI, you can see that some of these are very, very specific points. So including the implement strong access controls. In the CSF classification, access controls are actually found under a far more general function of protect. And that's kind of what the point of the CSF is. It does a much better job of generalizing and abstracting data security than a more specific standard, which makes it far more easy to adopt and implement at a high level. So the next levels in the hierarchy are the categories and subcategories. So you can think of these as those additional sorting bins, one level down. So they're specific enough so that it can meaningfully classify all kind of standards, but they're not too granular so that it's as complex as the actual underlying standard, if that makes sense. So we pick out identify here. There are three separate security categories under identify: asset management, risk assessment, and improvement. And you can see that the category identifiers there on the right: IDAM, IDRA, IDIM. And at the lowest level, if we go into identify a bit more, and we look at that asset management subcategory, this is the lowest level of the hierarchy. This is actually where the subcategories are mapped to actual controls. So the table on your screen there shows the mappings of the identity functions asset management category, and it's broken out by its subcategories. And then, as you can see, the NIST CSF maps into many of the most popular standards on that right-hand column. You might be familiar with quite a few of them. But some of them might actually not be there. So you might notice if you look through all of the standards on the right-hand column, you might notice PCI DSS isn't mapped. That is the case with some things, but fortunately, PCI, for example, the standards committee themselves have provided detailed mapping in their own CSF, in their own documentation regarding the CSF, and you'll find that is the case with the majority of regulations. If CSF doesn't map it themselves, then that specific regulation will most often map to the CSF. And it's important to note that the CSF is not meant to be a replacement of any standard. Instead, it's complementing the standards by putting them into an overall security process. And we'll delve into what that might look like in practice in a bit more detail in a later part of the webinar. But should we go forward? That's the basics of what the CSF would look like in a really, really high level. If you're before I get into the details of what it looks like in practice, I just wanted to emphasize a point that if your organization has found a different type of framework useful, like the MITRE ATT&CK framework, for example, is a really popular framework that many find very useful when it comes to specifically detecting, responding to malware attacks. The CSF is not a replacement for that either. It doesn't force you to stop using that. They really all complement each other, and that it's really worth exploring as many of these frameworks as possible. And there's a lot of overlap, obviously, but it's not a one or other approach. It's really complementary, and the same can be said for PCI DSS, for example, and those other specific compliance mandates. So now let's see what this kind of framework would look like in practice. So if we line it out properly, and we're going to use here our own platform, the Lepide Data Security Platform, as a reference point, because I think it's the easiest way to see what it looks like in practice. And I'll go through each of these briefly, and then we'll delve into them in a bit more detail. So in the first phase is the identity phase. We're looking to identify kind of what sensitive data we have, and which users have privileged levels of access. So we're looking to really identify kind of the high level of what our threat surface is. So if we go in very quickly, here you can see an example of one of our reports. This is our users with admin privileges reports. These are the users that have the keys to our kingdom. In this report, we can see on that right-hand column the method in which the permissions are being applied. You can also see who the users are, the user path, the group that they're a member of, what their display name is, so and so. This is just a very high-level initial understanding of these are your most important users. These are the users that have administrative permissions. And then we want to look at our data. We've seen who our important users are. What is our most important data? And here we've run a report on the data that we have on our file server, and we run it through our predefined classification rules to get a really granular look at where our sensitive data is, and the volume and the type and the sensitivity of the data that we have. And we can even see on there are a couple of columns that are a bit more subjective. So monetary and risk values, these are customizable. We set a value for these based on the type of data it is and what compliance mandate it might relate to. But these are customizable. You can set those values depending on what you weight in terms of risk. But we can see here, you're getting Amex credit cards, Diners Club, and these are these credit cards that are related to the PCI DSS. We can see in this particular file path, we've got a very large amount of them. That's understanding at a high level what our data looks like, where our sensitive data is, and what is making it sensitive. And then this is our permissions by object report. So we're kind of combining what we know now about the users and the data into one report. So here we're looking at a file that we know contains sensitive data. We're looking at our finance folder here. This is the subfolders and the files that will contain within that. We can see the content type, the compliance it's related to, and again, those monetary and risk values, those are being carried over from our other data classification. And then at the bottom here, we can see that this particular user, Randall, is he's getting full control of the file that's being inherited, and his control is actually being inherited from the parent object. So we're starting to build a picture of what our threat surface looks like in terms of how much sensitive data we have, where it's located, and which users have access to it. And then the next stage of the process is protect. And while it's only got one point there, it's quite an important conceptual stage in which we need to really look to reduce the threat surface area that we've identified. So in this stage, it's really, really important to identify data that's currently at risk. And we have a process that we like to start with our customers. We like to look at open shares. So open shares means that data is open to all users through an open share. And ideally, we want to limit the amount of open shares. And it's an area that is a really quick win when it comes to reducing overall access to sensitive data. So this is one report we can run to initially immediately see, okay, this is a risk. We need to reduce this risk. And we have numerous reports of this kind in that risk reduction area that I could show you, including inactive users in AD, that's a larger threat surface and it's potentially unnecessary, or users that have non-compliant passwords, so passwords that are set to never expire, for example. These are all risks. These are all risks to both security and to compliance that we can deal with, and we can run simple reports, and they're all in this kind of easy to read, easy to understand layout. And I could show you all of them now, but I think it's worth in the short time that we have to focus on a couple of our more intelligent reports. So if we have a look at this report, this is excessive permissions by object. And in this report, it looks similar to the last report we saw, but we're looking at a folder that we know has sensitive data in. And again, we can see that sensitive data. It's down in this corner here. We can see what data is in there. We can see the breakdown of the subfolders within the folder, the owners of those folders. But here we can see really the permissions on the folder, and crucially, we can see users that have what we deem to be excessive levels of permissions. And we work that out by analyzing user behavior over a set learning period and identifying the users that aren't utilizing their entitlements. That could be over, let's say, a 6-month period. If somebody hasn't accessed a file, or in over 6 months, we can deem that to be an excessive level of permissions if that file, for example, contains very sensitive information. And we can see that by this red tick and green tick layout down here. With somebody might have permissions to read, create, or modify a file, whatever it may be. So these are users where we can pretty safely reduce their access without actually disrupting the business. And by doing all of these things, combining quick wins like open shares, inactive users in AD, but also some of the more intelligent stuff like user behavior and access, we can really help to reduce our overall threat surface and help improve our data security posture. And once we've done that, that's usually what we like to start with. We get that threat surface down, reduce your risk, and then we can move on to the detect phase. This is where we want to be looking for our user behavior, what our users are doing with the data that we give them access to. And then we're probably going to combine this, I think, with the respond phase, because they're very similar. We want to detect and respond as quickly as possible. So this is our anomaly analysis. I mentioned this before. We learn what normal behavior looks like. We establish a baseline for normal activity, and then our machine learning will learn that. The longer you leave it running, the more intelligent it becomes. And then we'll be able to see all of the deviations from that normal behavior. So on the left, you can see all our users, the platforms that we're looking at, and then the number of anomalies that are occurring. And in this example, we've clicked into Justin Hammer, so you can see all the anomalies that Justin Hammer is responsible for. And we can click into any of these records to see the actual individual events that have occurred to make up that anonymous behavior. And you can see that on the right-hand side, there's a file open, modified, denied twice in a short space of time. Whilst this information is really invaluable on its own, when it comes to detecting and responding threats and deviations in user behavior, it can be quite overwhelming, especially if at the start when there's a lot of anomalies being generated. So you want to leave it on for a while and really make sure that you set the thresholds correctly, so that you know that one-off anomalies might not be innocuous. One-off anomalies might well be innocuous. It depends on what those anomalies are. So it might be that someone opens a file they haven't opened in a while. It's technically an anomalous user behavior, but it's not necessarily a threat. But some sequences of events may be dangerous or suspicious. So if a user suddenly generates 100 failed file reads within a 5-second period, that's an anomaly that's worth looking at. So it's all about how you set these thresholds. And this is kind of where our threat models come in as well. We've done most of the work for you here. This is our threat models page. All of these are predefined, but they can also be customized to suit your specific needs as well. They basically look for specific sequences or events or anomalies that we know are critical. And you can see some of them here. Potential brute force attacks, an increase to your threat surface area or potential password compromises. These are really critical security threats that we can essentially automate the detection and response of. So we built into these threat models automated response actions, and the platform can respond in a number of different ways. It can respond in a way that's just visibility, in terms of we can generate a real-time alert, and that alert can be delivered to email addresses, to the dashboard of the platform itself, or it can even go to a mobile app, so that you can get the notification wherever you are. But we can even go a step further than that, and we can execute threat response. And we can trigger these to take immediate action whenever the alert is received. So we can take, if for example, we can take a potential brute force attack. We've seen that somebody's got a lot of failed logons over a very short period of time. We can shut down the compromised user account, and we use that. We use scripts to do that. Which again, you can customize your threat response actions. If you don't want to shut down a compromised user account, you want to go a step further and shut down the computer as well, or the server, even whatever you want to do. That can all be generated and automated within the platform. And it's all about speed in this phase. It's all about being able to detect and respond in a way that's as automated as possible, because automation is always going to be quicker than sifting through event logs or even sifting through reports. So the recover phase is going to be the last phase I'm going to talk about specifically, because the govern phase, as we mentioned before, it's kind of feeds into all of them. It's how you implement all of them. And so we're going to focus on the recover phase now. This is all about getting the information you need to make informed decisions about improvements to security, whether that be in the event of a threat or an incident, or you just you want to get more visibility over what's happening. And we do this through very, very detailed auditing, gathering events across your entire on-premise and cloud infrastructure, and creating really simple, easy to understand reports. So you can see a small example of this here. This is our all environment changes report. So this is just a very basic report that can be completely customized. So at the moment, we're looking at everything here. We're looking at all the platforms that we covered: AD, OneDrive, File Server, Exchange Online. We cover a wide range of on-premise and cloud platforms. We were looking at objects. I'm looking at users, groups, files. We're also incorporating in this information about the actual data that we had from before. And then here are your critical audit information. You've got who, you've got when, what happened, where it happened, even a criticality rating, all contained within one report. And these can be filtered very easily. So we can filter, for example, to focus just on AD if we wanted to, or we could filter just to focus on files, or even files that contain specific data. This is where we can really investigate what's going on. And it's all done in one report. It's dynamic. All these filters are interactive. You can sort them. You can do live filtering to focus down on a specific user if you want, or whatever it may be. So these are really clever reports. They're really interactive. They're really easy to understand, and they just really help you simplify the information that's coming from event logs into formats that filter out the noise, and they make them accessible for everyone. And as I said, so that's essentially all we're going to go through in terms of what the framework looks like. As I said, the governance phase isn't necessarily relevant to the demo today, because it's more around your policies, your practices, your strategies, and it's really an ongoing process involving the rest of the categories we've spoken about. So really the last thing to do here before I hand over back to Michael and some questions is talk about what the next steps might look like. So there are lots of ways to evaluate Lepide. It depends on what you're looking to do and how urgent your requirement is. If you wanted to go straight into a POC of the solution, then you can start a free trial. I would always recommend requesting a personalized demo first, especially if you're interested in a specific part of what you've seen today and you want to see that in more detail. We can show you exactly how you would use our solution to meet your specific use case, for example. But if that's too much of a commitment, we also have an in-browser demo that it goes through some of our most requested use cases in a step-by-step format, so you can get kind of an idea of what our web console is like to use. and the kind of things that are included in the reports and everything that's included in there. So many ways you can evaluate. We also do for if you're just looking to get an understanding of what your current risk is, maybe you want us to apply that NIST cybersecurity framework model to your business and see where your risks are, help you identify your threat surface, help you reduce risk, help you, you know, see what's going on. You can request a free data risk assessment, and we'll just use our solution, and we'll work with you over a 2-week or so period to produce a detailed report on what your current risks are. So you can request that as well. All of these, by the way, are available on our website as well. You can find them very easily on lepide.com. So take a look around there, and yeah, I think that's everything from me. So yeah, I'm going to hand back over to Michael, and I think it's probably question time, I would imagine.
Thanks very much, Phil. Really appreciate that. Whistle stop tour through compliance, and I think probably many of our audience would love that compliance was so whistle stop. But there are a few things to be addressed, obviously, and it is interesting, and we see this with a lot of our customers and our partners, if you like. Our partners and their clients are saying, everybody has a compliance driver, and there is a significant overlap between them all. I mean, you talk about HIPAA, you talk about DORA, NIST2, NIST, blah blah blah, whatever, PCI. I'm not saying blah 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 and that they don't count. They do count, but there's a massive overlap between them. And I think certainly what we're seeing is that if you're compliant with one, you're a long way towards being compliant with another. I think would that be a fair comment?
That is correct. I mean, I would always suggest that if you struggle with the complexity of specific regulations, and they can be incredibly complex and very detailed, then the best place to start, or if you just want to start somewhere, the NIST cybersecurity framework is ideal. It is simple to understand, it's easy to apply to any organization, and if you are aligned with the cybersecurity framework, more often than not, you are 90% of the way there to any specific compliance regulation that you are bound by anyway.
And I know some organizations have a challenge with particularly NIST2 and DORA, in that it's not all clear as to what they'll finally the regulations will be, if you like, and so it's moving towards something. But just coming back to some specific questions, there's a specific question in there which is, excuse me, is data in standard databases supported, e.g. SQL Server? Also, is data in the Microsoft Dataverse capable of being monitored? Also, Azure security, such as secure endpoints, etc.
Yeah, it's a good question. So, short answer, yes. We cover most standard databases, including SQL Server, Microsoft Dataverse. We cover most common data stores, both on-premise and cloud. Also, in terms of Azure security, Azure and Entra ID, I think it's called now. We do cover as a directory. We cover the security of that as a directory. We don't go down to the endpoint level. We're directory and data store, but we don't deal in endpoints.
Avoid the endpoints. But there's a couple of questions here as well, which have come to me, and one question is, how scalable is Lepide for larger organizations?
A very good question. Highly scalable. As your organization gets larger and more complex, we can use what we call functionality orientated architecture. So it's the architecture we've developed, and it's proprietary to us, that it ensures you maintain uptime and speed. And we really think that performance outclasses our competitors. We hear a lot of feedback from some of our major competitors that, particularly in larger environments and larger data sets, sometimes the scans take hours and hours and hours, or don't even run, or it falls over itself. No, I think because we've got that proprietary architecture, we can scale very well.
And what sort of some of your larger deployments? What are they? Large scale?
Yeah, we've deployed in organizations of all sizes. Just the other day, we were deploying in an organization of 6,000 users. We really deal with organizations of all sizes. We've got SMB customers, and we've got customers with over 10,000 employees. So really, we cover all sizes, and we've proven that scalability through and through, I think.
Excellent. And so, question here about the learning curve for Lepide. Are there any training resources? What's involved in in getting to the levels you need to be?
Yeah, of course. So I think there are plenty. There are obviously very many training resources available. I think we're more intuitive than our competitors. I think hopefully I've demonstrated through the screenshots that our user interface, the web console, is really designed to simplify what potentially complex event logs and reduce noise. And I think hopefully we saw that in the reports. But we can also offer comprehensive training resources. So we have documentation, very detailed documentation. We've got webinars. We've got video tutorials on not only on installation configuration, but also on best practices and user guides. And we've got a very good reputable support team, and we've even got alignment guides to help you set up the platform for a specific use case you might have, whether that be ransomware, whether that be data access governance, zero trust, whatever it may be. So our website is an embarrassment of riches when it comes to training resources, but we've also got a very good customer success team as well. During the evaluation phase, you'll be handled by very quality support team, and then as soon as you become a customer, you get access to your own customer success manager who will take care of you
To make sure everything goes well and nice and simple.
Yeah.
There's a question here about data storage, but I think we probably covered that at this stage already. But just how frequently are updates and new features added to the platform? So how is it maintained and updated?
Yeah, pretty frequently. We've got quite a large development team, and I think this year we're trying to average a release every quarter. And there are some, they're not just small releases. Those quarterly releases are major releases, major new functionality every quarter. So our latest release came out in May of this year, sorry, and we added it was all focused around Entra ID security. So it actually might be relevant to the earlier question. So a lot of really cool, detailed state and time and change reporting all around Entra ID, and that was brand new to us in May. So it's worth having a look if you want to see the release history of the platform and how often we've updated it. We've got a news section on our website and a release history as well. So you can go into that, but we'll have another release coming for you towards the end of next month.
Excellent. So it's continually being updated. It's continually developing as the requirements develop.
And
go ahead.
Sorry, the next update is going to be quite exciting as well, but I'm not allowed to share any further information at this point.
Yeah, you're excited, but nobody can know why. Just for the moment.
Yes, exactly. But just as a tease, yeah.
But it's significant. Okay, and I guess that there's a question here, which is what's the best way to evaluate Lepide? And I think you probably touched on some of that earlier. And just if I can make a comment, sort of the things that we see with the technology like this. And sorry, if anybody else has any other questions, if they please put them up into chat. I don't have any other questions at the moment, but what we absolutely see with technology like this, the really important thing is everybody who's on this webinar will have a different type of requirements, slightly different nuance or an area of focus where they have their organization. And the benefits we always see is if somebody gets a demonstration that's specifically related to them, then they can drill down to the areas that are really key and relevant to them, and they get the maximum benefit out of that. But sorry, I was asking you a question rather than making a statement, but go ahead anyway, in terms of the best way to get evaluation.
No, I 100% agree with you. The best way to understand whether or not we're a fit with your needs, because it might be that we're not a fit. We're very honest and upfront about, we want to work with you to achieve your security goals. We want to understand what your objectives are. The best way to do that, the in-browser demo is great. It goes through some common use cases, but they're almost certainly not going to be your specific use case. So please do request a personalized demo. We'll show you what we do, how we do it. We can tailor it to your requirements. We can get into any technical questions. We can really do a deep dive of what you're trying to achieve. So let us work with you in that sense.
Okay, so there are a couple of questions there. Is there additional licensing required for different platforms? Is Active Directory Azure, or does one license cover everything?
So it is licensed per platform, and it's licensed per user as well, and per core functionality. So we have, for the platform, it's probably maybe a bit too detailed for this session to get onto, and if you depending on because it really depends on your organization. But our platform is broken into 4 modules. We've got our Identify, which is our data classification module. We've got Trust, which is everything to do with permissions. We've got Detect, which is that automated detection and response piece. And then we've got Auditor, or Lepide Auditor, which is the fundamental reporting functionality there. So it's licensed per functionality that you want, per platform, and per user. But there are different thresholds of companies where we do different packages. So it really depends on your environment, Rory. So if you want to get in touch with us, we're happy to talk through it in more detail.
And I think that the key thing there is let's have let's follow that up with a demonstration for anybody with a similar question. Let's follow that up with the personalized demonstration, and let's follow that up then with the member of the Renaissance team can follow up with yourselves, or the Lepide team, and we'll follow up, and then we can give you an idea then what's involved from a cost point of view, etc., etc. One question there is the timeline of the NIST 2 directive. I think that's October time. I think is that this year. I think that's right.
That's correct, as I understand it, October this year. Yeah.
It's interesting. We come across people who say, well, NIST 2 is coming along. It's something we need to look at, and it's October, and I'm thinking, yeah, the way this year has flown by, October will be on top of us very quickly, and January the 17th, 2025 is DORA. So these things are coming thick and fast. Regulatory and compliance drivers are just they're an oncoming storm. They are the train oncoming, so we definitely see irrespective of dates and deadlines, and they'll just keep coming. I think it's what we're absolutely seeing as people are looking to say, listen, we need to get things in order at this stage. I don't have any other further questions, Phil. I'd like to thank you, but I'd really like to thank all the people attending the webinar. And this will be made available as a recorded session. So if you wish to review this again, or indeed look at pass this to any of your colleagues, please do so. You'll be sent a link, and Renaissance and the Lepide team will follow up with yourselves. But if you have any questions, come back to any of the Renaissance team, any of the Lepide team, and we'll organise to get you that trial and that demonstration and whatever is required to maximise your opportunity, make sure you're secure. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.